Yeah.
That's James' decision.
Yeah. All right, I think we're gonna get started. You guys, everyone hear me okay from this rough? Okay.
Yep.
So the idea for the format of this is gonna be pretty simple and straightforward. I'm gonna give just a little brief introduction of who I am, what I do, and then the goal, I brought a list of topics, so if you guys don't come up with your own questions, I certainly can do that. But the goal is to answer what you all wanna know about streaming, about this as a profession, about my experiences with that, and that's kind of where I wanna go with that. So what I'd like is a ton of interaction from you guys, questions, thoughts, etc. There's no dumb questions, probably only dumb answers, so just don't feel worried about interacting. I want that. Sam's going to be wandering around recording it. My goal is to eventually put this up on YouTube. I'm hoping not to include any of y'all's faces in there, just to make this, probably you don't want that, I understand, that's perfect. So he's not going to be including any of you, so don't let the camera scare you from asking questions or interacting. Hopefully this isn't distracting. But my wife suggested that one of the things I do is show you some of the stuff that is behind the scenes for me. This is some of the stuff that I work with and look at sometimes as I'm streaming and sometimes as I'm prepping for streaming. So there's going to be a bunch of images there. If you have any questions about that, I can explain it, or we might get there anyways. I talk very fast. I grew up in the Northeast, and you might notice that in my speech patterns. So feel free to ask for clarifications, me repeat stuff, whatever. So, all right. So I'm FilthyRobot. I'm a full-time streamer, and so on Twitch streamer and YouTube content creator. I've been doing this for about 5 years now, full-time. Before that, I was a graduate student at Northern Illinois University going for my PhD. I left after my master's was complete to pursue streaming full-time. I mostly stream strategy games, although I stream a lot of different games and check out a lot of different types of content. And I think I define my job mostly as an entertainer. So entertainer and content producer is kind of how I look at that. So yes, playing games well is certainly part of that. Playing games a lot is certainly part of that. But really what I'm doing is I'm building an audience and catering to an audience and keeping people entertained. People turn me on like they turn on television, or they turn on a show, or other content like that they consume. And that's kind of how I see my position as a streamer or YouTuber here. All right, so why would you care what I say about this? What are my credentials as a streamer? This one I had to think about. How do I answer this, right? So I'm what I consider a medium-sized streamer. I stream on average to somewhere between 300 to 800 viewers on average. Really good days are in the mid-thousands. The peak channel I've ever had peak number of streamers, of viewers I've ever had in my stream is about 4,000. Although yesterday I received a host for 13,000, so it's weird. There's a lot of up and down for viewership, so it's kind of tough to put that in perspective. However, when I start looking at some of these, there's a lot of sites that track streamer and YouTuber demographics. A lot of this is for advertising companies and sponsors who are interested in basically looking at what type of impact does this content producer have? How valuable of an investment is this for me to put money towards for my products? There's a lot of sites that track this, and some of the ones I use for this are Twitch Metrics, I think it's called, is one of them. And on that, I am apparently the 127th largest English language streamer on one of these. Another one says I am the 4,000th ranked streamer. And that puts me in the 99.91 percentile of streamers, which according to that website, if you do the math on that, means there's roughly 5 million people who have streamed that website has recorded, and that I'm somewhere in the 99.91 percentile for that. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. These are demographics that are pulled kind of inaccurately, so from some places, pulled from a variety of different sources. None of these sites seem to exactly agree on that. And as I think of myself, I think of myself as a medium-sized streamer. So take that for what you will, but that's kind of where I wanted to present as how do I compare to other streamers? Roughly there. So, all right. As I said, my background is academic primarily. I got into streaming feeling a bit burnt out with graduate school. I was doing gaming all my life, but I did gaming as kind of an outlet for my enjoyment, end of the day, have some free time, game for fun. I think a lot of you might be able to relate to that. And someone asked me at one point, I was getting very big into Civilization 5 multiplayer, and I was playing that a lot. And it's a very long, complicated game. And people started asking me, well, how are you doing so well? And I'm like, and what are you doing to do well? And I'm like, I started explaining it, and they're like, could you stream it? I didn't know what streaming was at this moment when that happened. So I looked into it, and it seemed like that was pretty easy. It's essentially just game capturing and then displaying that again. Started doing that, and people wanted to watch. And I was seeing viewership rise. This wasn't just a couple people showing up. I was seeing a couple hundred people show up. And people started asking me questions, well, I couldn't catch your live stream. Could you upload this content to YouTube so I could watch this later? And that seemed pretty easy to do, and started doing that. And as this grew as a pastime for me, and as I continued my graduate school progress, I kind of got to the point where I was feeling burnt out in graduate school. And I wasn't sure what that meant. Did it mean I was going to finish my degree? Did it mean something else? Did it mean, didn't know what was next. And I think on my own, I would have finished my PhD. But my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, said to me, you're really good at this. People are showing up to watch you. People want to see your content for this. You should try doing this. This is a profession that other people are able to do. She compared it in her mind, it was something like kind of like an artist to some degree, someone or a travel blogger, or one of these things where it's a bit out there as professions go. It's a bit strange, a bit different perhaps, but something that people are making a living out of. So she said, you should try it. You should try it for a year. So I took a year of absence from graduate school, pursued it for a year. I love it. I love what I do. Enjoy the hell out of this and hope to do this for as long as I can, and was doing well enough to do that I could make that. And I think it was, for me, a very scary leap to go from a profession in a track where I knew what was going to be the outcome of that and had put the work and time into it and was doing well in that, to move to something that was so different. But with the support of the people I cared about and the ability to make that change, to make that switch, and with the confidence of having gotten to where I was at the stream size at that moment, that was something I felt comfortable enough to eventually try. And that was 5 years ago. Here I am. And that's kind of where I'm from. So as I said, what I want to actually do is open this up for questions. So this is my kind of brief intro blurb. I've got a list of topics and ideas and stuff that I'm happy to chat about. But I want to start with kind of, what are you guys interested in hearing and learning about today? What is it that you guys want to know about streaming? Where can I start by, what can I tell you? What behind the scenes stuff can I spoil for you all? Feel free to jump in, just a hand.
Did you use stuff like Twitch and meetings like that rather than film casting to like OBS or something?
So Twitch is a platform. OBS is actually the software I do use to capture. So Twitch is kind of, the comparisons with Twitch would be like live streaming on Twitch or perhaps live streaming on YouTube. I think Twitch originally was like just on TV and kind of transitioned into Twitch as their platform and whatnot. So one of the slides that bounces around here, it's the one with just kind of the list of stuff in the middle, is the software that I use all the time to stream. And I'm happy to go into more of that if you'd like, that one there. And I do use OBS to capture my gameplay footage, so I do. All right. Go ahead.
There's a lot of, it's the internet, there's a lot of trolls out there.
Yes.
I'm assuming, do you have like bit shoutouts? If I send like 500 bits, I can
Sure.
have a message displayed through a word text-to-speech kind of deal?
Yep.
Over time, have you gotten used to it, or what do you do to kind of just brush off some of the hate, some of that kind of stuff?
All right, so I think this is even as an intro to kind of a slightly wider topic on that. So to answer that question directly, I've always had a fairly thick skin, and if any exposure to the internet for any length of time either thickens your skin or drives you insane. And I still mostly seem to be in control of my faculties, so I think it's probably the former. You learn very quickly that people are there for a wide variety of reasons, and a lot of those are entertainment-based. And one of the ways that people find entertainment is by poking you. So if they can get under your skin, they will. If they can see you, a lot of the enjoyment that people get is or some of it anyways, is the reaction. And part of my job as an entertainer is to put myself in situations where I can create those reactions and also to kind of amplify those reactions if I can. So not falsely doing something I wouldn't otherwise, but man, if I'm frustrated, I'm going to talk about being frustrated. If I'm loving it, I'm going to talk about loving it. If I'm like in some ridiculous scenario, I'm going to do everything in my power to point out how unlikely that scenario is, how absurd it is, to make this is entertainment. So some people do come and they think that part of their entertainment is to come and be negative and to see the streamer suffer. And there's degrees of that I'm accepting, there's some I'm not. So some of it for the direct donation stuff, like what if you have people putting messages up on your screen that you don't want to see? There's software that lets you kind of select some of that. If you want to select out of some of that, you can ban words or phrases. You can do it artificially by putting the bar. If you put the bar high enough on a donation, people are not going to waste large chunks of money putting stupid donations up on there, or you can just ignore it. I mean, to me, that has been the single best response to trolls, is not to feed the trolls. If someone is deliberately trying to wind you up, take notice of that. Think to yourself, do I want to be wound up about this topic? Is this beneficial to my stream and beneficial to what I'm doing right now to have some reaction to this? Or is it better just to let it go? And if they're particularly persistent, particularly arduous about being a dick to you, you have all the tools at your disposal. This is your kingdom. I'm the king moderator of this. I have an army of volunteers whose job it is as moderators to police my channel, and I get to set what those boundaries are. So if someone pokes me a little bit, so be it. The ones that bother me the most are time wasters. If someone who repeatedly wants attention is wasting my time and doesn't have anything useful to say, after a while, my thought for that is I either ignore them or I ban them. And I'll give them a warning and be like, look, that was cute. I like the creative trolls are fun. They're fun to interact with. Non-creative trolls are dull. And I'll tell them, I'll be like, all right, you want to troll here, so be it. Make your troll interesting. If your troll is interesting and I get a laugh out of it, sure, we can let that happen from time to time. If your troll is boring, all right, you've had your chance, do it again, I'm going to ban you. So when you're on that platform, this is my platform, this is my presence, and I get to really define how people can interact with me on that and what I'm willing to accept and not accept. So some of it's thick or thin skin, some of it is that. Now, the kind of related topic that brings to mind for me is a lot of my emotion follows my stream in a way that is not always how I want it to be. This is something that I continue to work on as a streamer. High views, I'm pleased with that. That's a good thing. It feels like I'm doing well. And I take a higher mentality from that. Low views, the opposite. So I do notice that impact on my emotions, the responses from my channel. So that's something that related to me, on the mental health element of, what do you do with a bunch of people who are hating you on the internet? Well, that's one thing, but also the kind of related thing for me is that this is my profession. This is what I'm doing now for a living. This is my only source of income, and this is what I spend the bulk of my time doing and thinking about. So some of that bleeds in to my moods and my emotions from how that performs. And it's sometimes tricky to separate yourself from the performance of your channel. And I think for your mental health long term, you have to be able to do that. All right. Does that kind of answer what you wanted to know? Cool.
So you said you had an internet personality. Is that, I guess another comparison I can make is like Dr. Disrespect. When you're online, do you have a different personality, a different thing?
So my understanding, I don't watch a lot of Dr. Disrespect, but what I've tuned in, he's a very polarized personality construct, basically, right? He's acting when he's that. I'm not to quite that degree. It's just, I think of myself as an entertainer, so part of that seems to be to try to be entertaining. It's one thing to have people come watch my gameplay, and that is certainly a large portion of my stream is producing gameplay, and part of what I brand my stream as kind of an educational stream, where I am trying to demonstrate gameplay footage done well. So as I master games, I play games, master games, and then take that knowledge and try to create guides and input for other people so they can come master and enjoy this game as well. But part of that along the process is of that process along that time, there's a lot of time where I am streaming game to people, and that to me means entertainment is part of that. And so no, I don't have a personality construct like Dr. Disrespect. That's not kind of where I wanted to go with that. I find that very draining to act, but it's more along the lines of, okay, well, I'm not going to censor this emotion, or I'm going to deliberately put myself in a situation where I'm highlighting some element of my personality that comes out more so on stream than it might otherwise. At home and the rest of my life, I'm an introvert. I find it taxing to be in the public eye and interacting with people long term. That's my job, to do that. So some of it is opposite how I might, well, not opposite, but an extreme of how I might act in person, for example. So it's particularly notable for me to, so I like getting emotionally involved in my games. It's how I keep my interest level high, how I keep my motivation high to do well in games. I say this, and I say this jokingly, but it's true, but it's a joke at the same time, right? Which is that in any game versus any opponent, I hate my opponent in that moment. And it's not that I finish that game and I'm like, this guy's a dick. It's in the game. He's my opponent. He's my opposition. My goal is to beat him. And part of how I keep my motivation for that is to dislike them. There's nothing to do with and it becomes hard with me if I'm on TeamSpeak with someone because it humanizes them too much. And part of my motivation for that is to be the opposite of that. That bastard over there, I want him to lose in every way possible. I want to crush his economy and burn his villages down, or trick him into playing into my frilled mystic, or whatever it happens to be in the game that you're playing of that. And that's not who I am in person, of course, and that's not even who I am when I start getting into areas where it's more humanizing, like you're on video chat with them or Discord or something like that. But it's part of how I focus my energies to do well in these situations. So, did that kind of get to what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So as far as income generation, are you primarily supported by your pay? Huh? Are you primarily supported by your subscribers and your Patreon, or do you provide a substantial portion for this advertising? You previously said that there are these sites that track the viewership for advertisers. So do you get people approaching you for that purpose as well?
Yeah, so this is a great topic, and it has a lot of topics that kind of related to it. So I'll probably start with that and kind of maybe branch out into some more of those wider questions. So the short answer is my income revenue comes from a number of sources. It comes from direct donations from viewers. It comes from subscribers. It comes from Patreon supporters. It comes from YouTube ads. It comes from Twitch bounties, which are kind of a look at, it's a combination of advertising and sponsorship kind of Twitch bounties. Let me just think if there's any other sources I can think of off the top of my head for that. I think that about covers it. All of those are related to viewership. The higher your viewership, the more impactful all of those things are. I think part of it is also the size of your channel and determines that model. The larger you get, the more appealing you are to larger companies to trying to run their products to be, or trying to sponsor you to use or act or promote their products, because you have a wider influence, you have a wider impact and a larger impact on people. So as I get bigger, my channel, I get more and more, a lot of cold call stuff, but a lot of also opportunity stuff from companies reaching out to collaborate with me some way or another. You'll probably notice it coming through. One of the slides I've taken is, well, as I said, this spawns a lot, so I'll maybe try to make logical sense of some of the things that come out of that in order. So part of what I do for this profession is I'm perpetually looking for other games to become interested in. I'm constantly screening games as they come out. And part of this means that my process is often to be part of a number of sites that promote games, that part of the profession as a whole has a lot of devs reaching out who give you key codes as streamers to play their games. Now, a lot of times as you get bigger, it's not only a key code, it's also financial in nature. You know, the Twitch bounties are a good example of this. You ever see a gamer, a streamer on Twitch with the hashtag ad next to it? It means that content is sponsored. And generally the format at the moment is like an hour of gameplay for a set amount of money, and that starts to be more and more common the larger you get for that. But anyways, as I was saying, so part of my process is identifying games, reaching out to developers. A lot of times they'll reach out to me directly. They'll ask me, will you play this game? Or here's a code to play this game. We'd really like to see a review of it. But sometimes I reach out specifically for games I'm interested in. And a lot of that happens off stream behind it. And you can see one of them comes up. It's a spreadsheet with a bunch of, like it has the yellow highlighted columns. One of my volunteers manages one of my email accounts for this. I have a business email for this where we have a lot of offers per week that come through this. And part of my job is to sift through those offers off stream and make decisions about what I want to play on stream. So it tends to be a couple levels of vetting. The first level being, am I interested in this game at all? Okay, maybe enough to get a key, play it offline. If this is enough of a game that I'm interested in to then play online on stream, and do I think it will have a good impact or a good fit with my channel? And then as I play that more, did it have good impact? Is it deep enough I continue for longer? This type of thing. So I think, does that kind of get to where the revenue comes from?
Yeah, no.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good. Good.
Yeah, so I kind of have a question about, I guess like the correlation between your success and like how famous you become on like whatever platform you use, and like I guess you're seeing like pro play. I don't know if you've ever seen any pro play, but if you could talk about like how your success as an entertainer kind of relates to your pro play as well.
Sure. I think when you're saying pro play is in terms of being the top of a game, being a professional player. Okay. So I don't want my income tied to my tournament performance. I think tournaments for me, again, I see myself as a entertainer and a content producer. And I think tournaments have good impact for me in that role by giving me exposure to the greater audiences out there. If I do really well in something, great. I was listening to, I think it was a podcast by Destiny talking to another streamer who I don't remember now at this moment, talking about, well, what makes people interested? What do you need to do in a stream to bring people to your stream? What do you need to do to create an interesting stream, what types of streams succeed. And I think one of the, I don't agree 100% with their categorization, but I agree a lot with some of the things they said. And some of the things they said was, if you're the top, not the top like 1% of your game, but if you are the top like 5 players of that game, or maybe a larger game, the top 20 players or something, that will always drive viewers to you. That's always going to be one of the ways in which, as long as that game is popular, that people will come check you out because you are the best in the world at that game, or one of the few who are that good in that game. And I think that's great, but I think there are a lot of people who play video games, a lot of people who stream, a lot of people who put a lot of hours into these things. And for me, as a variety streamer, where I switch games from time to time, that would mean to keep my stream relevant, I would have to perpetually be the best in the world at each game I played. And I think that's, for me, setting up an unrealistic expectation and also an avenue that I don't want to take. I don't want to have to be the best in the world at each thing I do to reliably bring viewers to my channel. So some of the other things they suggested, or at least one of the tacks that I've taken with my stream, is to be educational about it. So yes, I value good gameplay and I value high-level gameplay, and I attempt to do that in the games I'm at. But part of it also for me is, what can I do differently than these other people who are good at the games that I'm good at? Is I can break it down. I can create content that takes the knowledge that I've earned through playing this and gives it to my viewers in a way that they can go experience, make their games better, make their engagement with this content more enjoyable, and otherwise do things that they wouldn't be able to do. So part of it goes to the other types of streams that they suggested might do well, and one of the ways to do that is to provide a service that other people do not, or to provide teaching or stuff like that. So this is some of the things that I think my channel does. So I don't want to be a pro gamer. I don't want my income tied to that, tied to doing tournament life, and I don't want to be tied to a single game. As that game grows or declines, your viewership will grow or decline in reference to that. If you are, for example, only a StarCraft 2 player, when StarCraft 2 runs its lifespan, or as it goes up and down in its viewership, you will have the same fate, and you'll be tied directly to that. And although that is not such a bad thing on a short term, or if in the long run, I don't want my streaming life to be related to that. And every time you switch games, you run some impact to that. As I switch games, I lose viewers. That's just how it is. But I don't see the ability to do this long term without the ability to also switch games, because games have shelf lives. They do eventually expire. Okay. Good.
So how much time do you figure that you spend on stream proportional to the time you spend doing work off stream?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. I stream probably about 45 to 50 hours a week, maybe about 45 to 55 hours a week probably on average. And I probably put in another 10, 15 hours a week in admin for that. So in between checking out other games offline, in between, for me, I manage this type of work through systems. I build systems that kind of carry on where I don't have to put a ton of time into each week. So weekly, one of my volunteers collects games that have been offered to me by developers, follows up on games that I've asked them to follow up on, and I kind of go through this list weekly, play some of these offline, and then decide if I want to play these online. In addition to that, I'm always looking for collaborations. I work a lot with, so I joined a team, Fade to Karma, which is also helping me with collaborations. It's another revenue source, by the way. Forgot about that in the other question. But also looking repeatedly to my peers, my other streamers, for people that I want to work with, things that we can do together that are different, both interesting for our stream, but also things that I can collaborate on. A lot of my free time is spent thinking about how I want to change, modify, upgrade, continue, focus my stream. This is a lot of this has become very quickly much more than a job and become a large portion of my life just in general, is thinking about this. This is what I want to do, and I'm very happy with it. And the kind of expression goes, if you love your work, then it's not really work. That's not quite true, but it is similar in that nature, right? You end up spending a lot of time. So I think proportionally, I probably spend about 2/3 to 3/4 of actual content production, be that streaming. I do offline YouTube recording for things like D&D, and then probably the other 25% roughly is probably spent thinking about planning for the stream and kind of direction choosing. And I think this is potentially one of the differences between streamers and YouTubers, is I think YouTube content tends to be, I think, more of a culmination of a lot of work going into it. That, you know, like they might produce a video a day, and that video might be a 20-minute video, but they spent the last 24 hours, they spent 18 hours of those last 24 hours putting this video together, or even longer sometimes. It might be a couple weeks in between videos, and they spent all this time doing that. Where I stream at the moment 7 days a week, which means that I can't be spending 18 hours a day thinking of content for that to be then streaming another 8 hours a day on top of that. It's just not enough hours in the day. So, good. All right, let's take a look. So we talked a little bit about the business questions, talked a little bit about game selection. I wanted to, I don't know if any of you, if you ask these questions kind of interest, if this is just something that you're curious about, or if you thought about streaming yourselves, do you want to know what it takes to get into streaming, just like the bare essentials, or what other, did you have other questions specifically?
I've always been interested in streaming more or less, but never really thought about getting into it. I've had friends who've had success in streaming and like tried their hand on it, and I guess it's just interesting to hear from somebody that more or less has experience in it, where my friends get 5 people watching and that's a big deal. So
yeah, so the very first TwitchCon that came out was produced, whatever the phrasing would be for that. I attended the very first TwitchCon. I attended it as a streamer, and I attended it with the mindset that it would be a professional conference, like a continuing education conference for some degree. And I think to some degree it was. And I asked the question, there was they did it by panels. They had a number of large streamers as, very large streamers, you know, the people doing 20K viewers or something like this, sitting on panels. And they would do a brief kind of who are they, and then they would field very similar to this format, actually field questions from the audience about that. And I went up and asked the question. The question I asked at the time was basically, you know, I'm enjoying Civ, but I'm wanting both to grow a larger channel and also transition away from Civ. How do I do this? And I received the most useless answers I've ever received to any question I've ever asked. And I think in the answer I was given, which I think was intended well and isn't entirely wrong, which was, I think I got something along the lines of, be yourself and your content will follow, or something like this. And I actually think that's fairly bullshit. Because of exactly what you're saying. Like, there are lots of people who fire it up, look at the technical specifications of how do you stream. It's not that hard. There's not that much tech involved with it. It's pretty easy to also be competent or decent at a video game. And then if that were all it would take, everyone would be doing this well. And additionally, everyone wants to do this. On paper, it sounds like the ideal job. You sit and you play video games for a living. How hard can it be? Why is that not, you know, everyone who likes video games goes, man, I wish I could, you know, how many times have you been in a game where you're like, I need to stop tonight because I have to go do homework, or I have an obligation, or I have to go to work, right? If you could just not have that, wouldn't that be easier and better? And the answer is it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's not quite as simple as that. So, and I've thought about this a lot. I've thought a lot about the question of how do you grow? What makes that happen? Why do some people succeed and some not? And I'm not sure there's one good answer to that, but some of the things that have seemed to have been relevant to me is the intersection of luck and timing. Why did I do well in Civilization 5? It was a market that I didn't even know was a market that I was tapping that of people, it's a fairly decently played game at the time. And there were a lot of people who were interested in it. It's a fairly complex game, and there were not a lot of people streaming it, or streaming it with much of a personality, or streaming it who were able to break it down so other people could follow it. So I got a little lucky when I started, which was I didn't even know that this is what I was going to be doing, or have it as an intention to do this for a profession, but I hit on a market that was undersaturated, and I was providing a service that no one else was doing in that field, or very few people were doing in that field when it started. So I think the best response, I'm going to steal this from Hafu. I think I asked her in her stream once, you know, what would you suggest to a new streamer starting? And I'm going to steal this directly from her because I thought it was very good advice, which is figure out how your channel is different from other people's channels and why someone would want to watch you. And if you can't answer that question for your content, you can't expect people to be showing up to watch your content. So if you're just the next guy along the way who's firing up whatever first-person shooter is the flavor of the month, and then playing that game like everyone else is playing that game, and you start on the list and you're a 4 people viewer or 3 people viewers, and you are number 9,999 down the list of people streaming that particular game at 3 people. You're doing it without a webcam, with no commentary, with no reason for people to tune in. No one's going to tune in. When you think of it in that way, that makes a lot of intuitive sense. So to come back to the answer of be yourself, that's not enough. Be yourself may be part of this. You need to be engaged and interested in this, and this needs to be something you're passionate about to carry on with, but it's not enough in of itself to just be doing that. So to get started, I really recommended this. Someone asked me recently about this, and I told them, try to find a reason why someone would watch you as opposed to somebody else. And I think if you cannot answer that, you're going to be in a rough time growing. And then there's the luck element of it. Exposure breeds more exposure to some degree. If you could be the world's best at this one thing, but if no one either watches that game or no one can find you, it doesn't matter. You have no impact on that. And this is where things like collaborations come out. Collaborate with other streamers. You can't just reach out to some 20,000 viewer streamer and be like, hey, you want to do something together? And they're like, who are you? What? And you're like, well, I'm in college and I stream to my 1 viewer a day over here, and I thought we'd collaborate. But you can do it with your own peer groups. You can you can find people of roughly the same size or slightly larger to work with, and there's still value in that. I a couple years ago worked with a streamer who is now a huge streamer, in my opinion, one of my friends, Joe and Ribs, and I invited him onto my stream to talk about, we were playing XCOM 2 at the time. And I invited him on because he was really good at that game. He had helped beta test it, helped put it together, some of the, I don't think it was the XCOM 2 Direct, I think it was one of the mods for it. I think it was like a Long War mod for that. And he was excellent. He knew everything about that game, how it worked, and I had seen his stream. He was streaming to, at that time, a fairly small stream, but he knew what the hell he was talking about. And from my perspective, I'm like, that's exactly the type of thing that I would want to reach out to as a larger streamer, is someone who, at that time, he's a much larger streamer than me now, that I wanted to reach out to him to be like, look, you can add value to my stream, and I can add value to your stream by returning that in terms of views and people coming to your page. And he's worked really hard on that. I mean, he's used similar things. Like, from his perspective, he provided a content for a larger stream, not just for me, another XCOM streamer, if you guys know Beagle Rush. He produced a weekly recap of Beagle Rush's playthrough. And he did this on his own time. But why? Because it got his name out there. People came to his YouTube to watch this recap, then came to his stream because they found him on his YouTube, and they found him through this other larger streamer, and he was providing that other larger streamer a service by doing that. That's the great type of collaboration you can do, where you're helping yourself and helping the other person at the same time, and that's the type of collaboration that's going to grow your channel. So what was he doing? He was providing something that was a unique asset to this other person and a unique product. There was no other product like that, and people ate that up and were interested in that. So that to me is like, when people ask, well, how do I get into this? How do I get involved? How am I ever going to go from 5 to 100 or 5 to 200 or whatever it is you're going to do? Start somewhere where there's a reason to think that you'll get growth from that.
So when you play these games 7 days a week,
Yeah.
a lot, very often, how do you keep yourself from getting burnt out on them?
So for me, this is part of why I insist on being a variety streamer. Because when I hit a wall in a game, like, I'm just done mentally. It's like a switch. It's not gradual. Rarely do I go slowly phase out of a game. For me, it's almost black and white if I'm interested or not interested. And that seems to be internal. It's not something I have a lot of control over. So for my own sanity, that means when I'm ready to be done a game, I need to be done a game. So, sorry, I've forgotten the question. Exactly what was it?
How do you keep yourself from getting burnt out?
How to keep myself getting burnt out. I change it up is the longer answer for that. I repeatedly find different things that engage me and stay with them as long as they are engaging, and then try to drop them when they're not. And that doesn't overlap perfectly with the real world. Viewers tend to, so I started with Civ as a streamer, Civ 5, and played that for first year and a half, 2 years of my stream, basically. And I was still interested in it. It was a very deep game, had a lot of replayability for it. But I did eventually get to a point where I was no longer interested. And a lot of my viewers were very upset with me when that happened. And I still get this from time to time. I still get this almost daily when someone will come into my stream and say, when are you going to stream Civ again? I haven't streamed Civ in like 2 years. So that question is totally inappropriate on some level because I'm so far from that. But people are still, I mean, some of it's good branding on my own part. Some people are still coming from my YouTube channel, seeing my guy videos, and then coming to my stream and being like, hey, when are you gonna stream that stuff? You put all these cool guy videos out. That's on some level good. But it does show kind of people's patterns of this. They get used to you as a streamer for a specific thing. And again, I find that probably a very finite thing. Your games have a shelf life. And some people are much better about suppressing or dealing with the fact that this is repetitive to a point that drives me insane. Some people are able to play a game for me ad nauseum and still be okay with that. And then presumably what will happen is when that game dies down, they will transition games and find another main game. And this is part of, for me, why it's so important, the selection process for this. Because I do also do a similar kind of thing, it's just my cycles are shorter. So I do a main game that I stick with primarily streaming, and then move to another main game generally that I'm primarily streaming. But the duration that I'm willing to spend on any given game tends to be a little bit shorter. So, and it's exactly for the reasons for my own sanity, it's to prevent burnout. Because if you are there, if you're an entertainer and you are forcing yourself to do something that you hate, unless that is the gimmick that your channel is selling to some degree, that eventually is going to hurt you. If part of what you're actually streaming, what your entertainment you're giving people is your absolute loathing of what you're doing, and that's entertaining for a subset of people, you may corner the market on that. There are definitely streamers out there streaming games they hate, and you can tell that. And sometimes it's hilarious because it's so clear they hate that game. But in general, that's probably not so good for you as a streamer, because what you really want to be doing is enjoying it, and that passion, that enjoyment of the game will bleed through, and your like of doing that will bleed through and be in part of why people come to watch that. But again, that is a totally legit way to create a stream. And there was a question earlier about how do you deal with trolls on the internet. And I have seen streamers. I watched a Reynad stream at one point. This was, I don't know how long ago, this was a year or two ago, maybe longer. And he had the text-to-speech up. And I've seen this done a couple times now, but this was the first time I had seen it done live. He had a text-to-speech reader coming up. And there was a donation. And the donation, he gets a lot of hate in his donations. I don't know why. Like these are like channel cultures. You cultivate a channel culture when you build your channel. You tell your mods what's okay. This behavior becomes behavior that people associate with the channel, and they sometimes, and they will pretty much abide to this. But anyways, his culture in that channel allowed people to donate, and they donated hate messages. They would donate things like shitting on Reynad. And he mostly shrugged it off, I think, as a whole. I think he dealt with this fairly well. And they're donating dollar donations, or not single dollar, but they have to donate money to do this. And some level, he's probably rubbing his hands going, sweet, put it in the bank, But this one was a particularly vicious one. And as a viewer, it was hilarious for me. It cracked me the hell up because it was a message that started off very positive. It was like, hey, Reynad, your stream is great. I'm so glad you stream. It really has helped me get through this rough time. And he starts nodding along because he gets this list of hate ones before this and he starts nodding along. He's like, well, I'm really glad to hear that. And then it goes, just kidding. You're a fucking asshole, or some variation of this. You suck. And then that was the end of that message. And at that moment, I had to think that this was part of his strategy for his channel to allow something like that. Because it was, as a viewer, that was a very entertaining moment for me as a viewer. Now, it's a pretty shitty way to find entertainment, perhaps, but I think from a strategic perspective, he's captured someone. Someone comes to his channel, watches his content, who purportedly, by their own words, doesn't like his content, but nevertheless is in channel, building his impact, building his viewer base, supporting him financially. Like, on some level, you can do that. If that wants to be the way that you approach this, do it. But that would not be what I would want to do with my channel. That, to me, like, you talk about thick skin, that boy's got to have a rhinoceros thick skin if we go through that, right? Because you have to be so inured to that just doesn't get under you, doesn't get under your skin, doesn't bother you. And if you can make that work for you, there's definitely a market out there. All right, this has fallen on almost you guys entirely to carry forward questions. I have more lists of things that if we can go through for that, but if you have other thoughts, other questions?
I'd be interested to hear some of what you thought you might want to talk about.
Okay. So I'll throw out some topics that I can do for this. Some of these. I've already talked about luck and opportunity, talked about collaborations. Viewer relationships is an interesting one for me. So I'm not sure this is much practical information, but it's something just I kind of enjoy talking about. It's weird how, for me, I still have subscribers who, one of them purports to be my first subscriber ever. I don't actually believe him. I think there were other subscribers before him, but he's been with me for now. I've been streaming for almost 5 years, and he has been a subscriber for basically as long as I have been streaming. And this is kind of your ideal viewer in a large sense as a streamer. It's someone who's followed me across all the games I've done. He's followed me across his life changes. He was a college student when he first started supporting my channel. He is now out in the world as a professional doing his job, who has much less time to view my content, but still shows up for part of this, who has become part of the community of my channel. And I think for the successful channels that do this, this is kind of what people are looking for. This is, I keep calling it entertainment, and it is, but it's kind of finding your entertainment out on the internet for this. And I do this to some degree. Other people do this better, of course. There's always going to be a comparison to some level, but building communities of people is part of what this is about. This is why it's better in TV. This is why there's a relationship between me as the streamer and my viewers as viewers. And it's a very distorted relationship in some sense. I have very little information about many of them. When they leave or when they arrive is outside of my control and outside of my knowledge. Like, people rarely say that, hey, Filthy, I'm not going to watch your channel anymore. Instead, they just disappear. And it might be a long-term sub of, however long, 50 months or something, right? They might just one day stop subbing and never say anything. And on the other side, there's also that relationship. So that's from my perspective. It's sometimes weird to see this. And, I hear about people's problems sometimes in the channel. I hear about their successes. People are often, showing up, say, I had a great day. I get this one a lot. This one happens fairly regularly, which is, I got a new job. It's great. I wanted to, now that I can afford to do this, support you. And they donate at me for that so I learned from a message like that their life situation has changed and is changed in the positive to some degree. And I did a video a couple months ago where I had the opposite. I had a viewer who said to me, he asked a question in chat, and his chat question was basically, Filthy, how do you find the motivation each day to keep going? And to me, that was like a question so ridden with clear pain that it kind of stuck with me. It stuck with me across the course of the day, and it stuck with me the next couple of days. And I eventually sat down and made a YouTube video to respond to that because it reminded me so much of the impact that you have as a streamer with your viewers, because there's a relationship with that. And there's people coming to you with their various life circumstances, not for you to fix it, that's not my point with this, but then interacting with you. And then what you do with that is on you and what you want to do with that, how you want to define your communities, how you want to build that, what you want the focus of that to be, how you guys want to interact. But it's human relationships in some degree. And it's sometimes a weird variation of human relationships, but that is essentially what you're doing with that channel. So that one always strikes me as interesting, because on some level, if you boil down what I'm doing to its kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my God. It's basically derivative, right? If you really kind of cut this down into its weakest parts or its most fundamental parts, I'm sitting in a room by myself, shouting at empty space, like looking into a camera, and there may or may not be viewers on the other end of it, and and like I would be doing the exact same thing to some degree even if there weren't any other people out there. But what makes it different is the interaction on that, because it is an interactive medium, and you do build these relationships with people whether you want to or not. I build relationships with trolls in my channel. There's one guy who comes into my channel whose name I will not mention here because don't feed the fucking trolls, who shows up, and I know the minute he asks me a question or says something, he is trolling. And it's just me to figure out how is he trolling today, and how much do I want to interact with that. And I find it vaguely annoying, but it's gone on for so long at this point that I am so used to it that mostly this is just another form of relationship on this channel. And it's not one I particularly want there to be like that, but mostly it's pretty low-level stuff. If it was really egregious, I'd ban him. But he keeps it, he manages to toe that line just perfectly enough. And presumably that's entertaining for him. And I don't know what his relationship is with that, but can you imagine a real-life relationship similar to that? Anyone whose relationship that you have with someone is just basically on low-level trolling? Like, it's such a weird thing to think about on some level. So relationships is very interesting to me for that. But then again, my master's was in psychology, and what I was interested in was human relationships. So that is just fascinating to me in general. So bringing it to there. Let's see. I talked a little bit about mental health, streaming is super self-directed. Do you have a question? No, 10 minutes, thanks. Streaming is super self-directed. This is one of the things that has been both a struggle and a joy of this, is I put in the amount of work I want to put in to do this. My success is dependent on that to a large degree, but I ultimately have the choice of, is this going to be a week where I'm super low energy and that's just how it is and I move forward? I don't have a deadline to meet. I don't have a minimum number of something I have to do. On some level I do, because all of my income derives from this, and if I don't do well enough with that, my income suffers. But on some level, it's still me making those self-directed things. So if you are good at self-direction, this career has some benefits for you. If you're good at setting your own benchmarks, your own goals, about moving forward with these and advancing those, great. If you kind of need that deadline or someone else sitting over your shoulder telling you you really need to get going on this, this again is something that is going to be painful for you in this, because you're out there with a bunch of people, you're competing with people in some degree. I mean, it's not mutually, it's not a zero-sum game. If other streamers do well, I don't do worse. And lots of times it's the opposite of that. A lot of times this platform still growing in viewership. And I think some of the numbers that pop up from time to time on the screen I'm showing over here show this growth. But as a whole, live streaming is getting bigger. And different types of that are seeing more and more prevalence. For example, it used to be against TOS, terms of service, to stream real life stuff. And now that's totally not the case. You know, you see real life streams in all sorts of different categories coming up there. This is a medium that is growing and will continue to grow, especially as other traditional entertainment and communication mediums change. And you're, or at least I am, in this with tons of other creative-minded people of all sorts of different backgrounds, with all sorts of different skill sets, with all sorts of different support networks doing this. And it's really easy, if you don't change, adapt, and pay attention to this, to be left behind. And if you're not motivated for this, it's really easy to be left behind for that too. And I certainly don't pretend to be doing this particularly well. This is not my background. I'm not in a marketing and promotion background. This has been stuff that I learn as I do this. And I find self-promotion in particular really hard for me to do and something I don't really like to do. But that, again, is on you as someone streaming to be able to do this. And that, to me, is something worth talking about for people when they are asking, well, I want to get into streaming. I like video games. Okay, that's a part of it. And that is a large, if you look at it by time, that's a lot of what you're going to be doing on your channel. If you look at it on terms of direction, that's a pretty minimal part of it. Yes, the game you play will be something that you need to find and select and do, but so much of the rest of it is not about that. It's about how you're connecting with people, how you're promoting, who you're connecting with, how you're branding, how you're interpreting, how you are telling people that you do things on your channel and why. Let's see, on my list of other things, I talked about mental health, self-directed, work hour breakdown we did. I think another one should be realistic expectations. I definitely still deal with this to some degree. It's impossible not to compare yourself to others, I think. And it's particularly rough on new streamers doing this, or streamers who aren't getting a lot of viewers. And I don't think it's a grinding thing. I do hear this from time to time. I hear people say, you know, well, of course, you've only been streaming for a month, or you've only been streaming for a year, or whatever it is. But I also heard this as bad advice in that first TwitchCon that I went to from these streamers. There was a guy who went up to the mic and asked the question, and he asked the question basically, you know, I'm trying to get to the next level of streaming. I've been streaming for a year. I'm paraphrasing here, and some of these are probably exaggerations. I've been streaming for a year, year and a half. I'm streaming to 3 viewers, and I'm really looking to, you know, break into like 10 or 20 viewers or something like this. And he got advice similar to the advice given to me. And I might even be conflating which advice I got and which he got. But the advice he was given basically was carry on, persevere, work hard, be yourself. Bullshit. Change your strategy. If you've been doing that for a year and a half and you have 3 viewers, you're doing it wrong. Not necessarily, it's not a failing of you, but your strategy you've chosen isn't realistic. And your expectations about what you're going to do with that strategy aren't realistic. Got to fix that. You know, I feel like someone needed to sit him down, that particular person, and be like, what does your channel do differently? Why do people want to watch you? How do they find you if they do want to watch you? How do they know they want to watch you? What are you doing to put yourself out there? What are you doing to show people that you're someone that they should come tune in for? And I don't think he was doing any of that. And the advice he was given would never fix that situation from him. And I would be shocked if he just carrying on, and something had changed. again, you can get lucky. You can find that, and I regularly put work in to try to get lucky, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but I'm constantly scanning for new releases that are interesting to me, particularly if they're in the domain of strategy that I play. I'm consistently trying to maintain and build relationships with devs who produce products that I like, because I want to be included in their betas, and I want to be included on release day. I want to be thought of. When Darkest Dungeon 2 comes out, and this is one of the games that I've played a lot of, Darkest Dungeon 1, I absolutely expect that the devs will reach out to me. I have a good relationship with them. They've been awesome to me. I loved their first game. I've had great viewership with it. I've produced a ton of guide videos for it. I've given them feedback on it. They're great people. Their game was great. Their product was great. And I can say great things about them because of that. That's fantastic. That's exactly the type of relationship I want. So I fully expect when Darkest Dungeon 2 comes out, if that game is good, even if it's not good, when it first comes out, I will guarantee that I will be checking it out. And then if it's good, I will be putting a bunch of time into that. And that's where I want to be as a streamer. I want to be on the forefront of a game coming out. That's the best time for channel growth and viewership, is when A, a good game has come out, B, it's new, and C, people are looking to find someone producing that content. Of course you're going to get views for them. You can aim for that. It is lucky if you find one that works out where you're going to be the biggest streamer for that, or one of the biggest streamers for it, or you're good at it, or you like it. There's some luck involved with that, but it is not luck-based if you were actively looking for something like that to happen. Whether or not each one hits you well, so be it. But you can set yourself up for success there. And I think that streamer who was that small streamer who was looking to get bigger wasn't setting himself up for success, and I think he was going to always get punished for that. Yeah, exactly. It is exactly that. Fortune favors the well-prepared. Absolutely. All right, I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. Did you guys have any final questions for me?
I guess just regarding advertising, so you said you would try to get on sites and with these devs when they first release some of their games. So do you ever consider advertising yourself, like actually paying money to advertise, potentially grow your viewership? Something you've explored?
Yeah. No, I've never explored growing my viewership through paying. I'm not sure even what that would look like. Certainly, money expenditures are, I guess, I'm trying to translate that and think about the ways that that actually happens. So certainly money put forward towards technology for my streaming is stuff that I consider well-spent money. I just recently bought an Oculus Rift. I recently picked up a console controller. I've never been a console gamer, and I don't know any one way or the other about virtual reality, if it's going to be any good or not, but it behooves me to take the time to look into that as another alternate option. I am sure I know there are good games coming out on consoles that I normally don't play. Console controller makes it a little bit easier for me to get into if I wish to go that route. Having the Oculus Rift gives me the option. My hardware doesn't particularly support it very well right now, but I'm going to be upgrading hardware again soon to be able to do that. Money spent towards channel artwork is generally, some of this can be very steep for new streamers and isn't something that is a super high priority, but it's something that I think of later, like get back to. It's worth picking up emotes, it's worth picking up extra custom artwork for this, because you're branding to some degree. And the return you get on that may not be immediate or very easily measured for you a lot of times, but a lot of times it's impactful. So yes, I definitely agree that investing in your channel makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'm not sure that it translates as nicely as to, if you spend $1,000, you get 1,000 more viewers, that'd be great, but I don't think it works that way. And it does come back out on the other end a lot of ways. The larger and more impactful your channel, the more opportunities, often financial opportunities, you'll be offered. And that's not always something you want. You don't want to say yes to every financial opportunity. There's going to be, some of them are just blatant sellout things, and that's okay from time to time. Well, I have to make a living. I've got to go home and support my family and contribute to my household and eat. So on some level, I'm not upset about selling out for some things, but I do try to keep that level to a palatable amount. I want to produce the content I want to produce. It's one of the reasons why I'm a streamer, and doing it for myself is I like that creative control over my own content in life. And I'm willing to compromise on some of that to some degree of, well, this is a financial reality. Or, as I said, it's again very nice with something like Darkest Dungeon 2, again, to put it back, where I have that nice impact of a game I like, devs I like, a product I like, and then also the financial opportunity that comes with that. Cool. All right, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming up with the questions. This would have been a firing questions off, but a much different presentation if it's just me talking through it. Cool. Thank you. Cheers, guys. All right.